Hello everyone, really excited to be here at this early career event. My name is Shelley and I'm here to talk to you about two things. Topics which I think are completely huge and would probably rightly deserve a full day each. So I will do my best to give you the things and tips and bits and pieces from my own experience and opinion. So what I say to you is what I've been experiencing over the last whatever years as a psychologist. So to tell you a little bit about me, because I think it's really important to understand where my experiences are grounded in. So I completed my social psychology degree at the University of Ulster, you can probably tell by my accent, in 2008. I then stayed there and did a PhD with Professor Ed Cairns and finished that in 2012. And I started just a month or two before my Viva, I started a lectureship at Hertfordshire. And you can ask me about that. It wasn't a straightforward position to get, very complicated. I worked there for a couple of years, and at that time it was ref period and everyone was recruiting only people who had four-star papers, and I was not one of those people. So I went to the Netherlands for a year and a bit and worked as an assistant professor at Leiden University College, and then came to Bristol in 2014, where maybe this meandering sort of pathway in some ways looks very straightforward, but actually I'm based in a school of education, and you can ask me about the trials and tribulations and fun of that later as well. So why am I here talking to you? Well, I still see myself as an early career psychologist. Some of you might disagree, but I think I fit within that 8 years just about, so that's quite nice. But also, I have had a few different jobs in terms of academic jobs, and have also been very lucky and privileged to have some grant funding. That includes 2 ESRC grants that are just both wrapping up, as well as other small pots of money. Okay, so I guess that's why I've been asked to talk with you about these particular things. So let's move on to the more exciting things. So securing funding, this is a huge topic. I've done half-day workshops, full-day events on this type of thing. So I want to just pick up some small snippets that I think are important to consider when you're applying or trying to get funding. And the first one, I think this relates really nicely to what Dan was saying earlier. There are lots of types of funding that you can apply for. I think we sometimes become quite tunnel visioned. We think, okay, only the ESRC or only the European Research Council, that's the only place I can get money. That is not the only place you can get money, and also not the only type of funding that is available for you. There's all sorts of things within your institutions. You probably have school level funds, faculty level funds, university level funds. Your university, depending on which university, might also have impact funds, knowledge exchange, all sorts of things that go above and beyond the traditional research type funding. There's also funding available from organisations, so like the BPS, and for me, like the European Association of Social Psychology, SPICI, all sorts of APA, for example, all sorts of awards available there, but also within local and national government. So often those come with very tight timelines. There's other funding as well available for evaluation of programs. So as psychologists, we have really solid and excellent, I would say, research methods training. And that puts you in a really nice position to be able to work towards funding that others might not be able to. Okay, so lots of options there. And I don't have time to go in more detail about where you find all of this information and so on, but I'm happy to talk with you about those. My approach to this has been to start small. Now, you might be in an institution where you're told the only funding you should apply for is funding that covers your time. Okay, and that's really tough. Some institutions require you to cover, it's called full economic costing, your own time, cover your costs. But for me, what I find is that starting small has been really useful. Okay, so go for those travel funds, go for those early career awards, go for the £1,000 to set up a group, £300 to host a policy event, whatever it may be, because it will give you the confidence that you can manage the money, that you can manage the people, and eventually it will give the other funders confidence that you can do that as well, right? So if you're able to show in your profile, yes, I've had this travel award, I've done this, that, and the other, and I've been able to manage that. So you can have more confidence that I will be able to manage a larger sum of money. Getting started, really difficult to get started writing a grant application. And what I've got here in the slides relates to, I guess, more the traditional research application. So imagine you're writing something for a British Academy, £10,000 grant, or an ESRC, 20, 30, 40, 100,000, whatever it may be. But regardless, start early. For me, what I find is the applications that I spend most time on are the ones that I get. The ones that I don't get are the ones with the short deadlines. And that's really hard because often the grants are short deadlines, right? So they tell you tomorrow that something is due next month. Okay? You might have a little secret bag of something, you know, you've got ideas, you've been writing them up so that when a call that's related to what you're interested in comes out, you can go for it. Okay, so think carefully about how you might do that. Obvious things, but really important things. Read the application guidelines. Make sure you're actually eligible. Make sure that you are able to produce all of the things that you need to, right? So for the ESRC, for example, it's not just a research proposal. You've got a data management plan, an impact summary. You've got all of the stuff in the JES form that you have to do. There's often a lot more to it than what meets the eye, so please really be careful. If you're based in a university setting as well, talk to your research team. You should probably have a group of people somewhere within the institution that are responsible for telling you about grants or supporting you with grants. They might have past applications that you can look at. I know in our institution we do, and that's really, really useful. But also they might have procedures that you need to go through. So they may have a process where you have internal selection. So they won't let you submit something because the institution is only allowed to submit a few things at a time. Or you may need approval from finance, from your head of school. I know when I started, I didn't realise all of these processes. Okay, so there are usually these kind of mechanisms in place. When you're writing your application, don't aim for a perfect first draft. It's really easy to get sucked into this needs to be perfect before I share it with anyone. Don't let yourself get into that position. Do something solid, as solid as you can, and once you get it, put it away, get it out to other people. So what I do is I give my grant applications to lots of people, psychologists and non-psychologists. Because what often happens with these kind of applications is that you're not evaluated by psychologists, or you're evaluated by an interdisciplinary panel. So if people who are not psychologists don't understand what you're trying to say, you might not get past the first hurdle if there's, you know, a particular selection process. So I always send my work to people I meet at the institution or outside of the institution, geographers, economists, psychologists. I'm quite good at talking to people and sort of buttering them up a little bit so that I don't feel quite so bad about emailing and asking them. But what you will find is that most of us, I know I am, and I'm sure many people in the room, are more than happy to support you with these kind of things. We might not be able to do it on a tight deadline or turn it around really quickly for you, but I think most of us will say yes, really happy. We want to see you succeed, right? We want to see you get to where you need to and where you want to be. Think about who your review panel is and who your audience are, okay? So if you're writing for a lay audience, get rid of that specialist language that you might not need, strip it right back. So when people say to me, what is your research? I could say, I'm really interested in the microecological process of segregation, blah, blah, blah. Or I could say, I'm really interested in getting people from different groups to like each other better. So see, once you start practicing that and getting used to that, you'll be able to see how you can share your research with people outside of your discipline. As part of some of these applications, again for traditional research application, you will need to write a research proposal often. Now this can be 6 pages, 4 pages, 2 pages, 1 page. It might be a multiple selection process where you submit something small, an outline, and then later something much longer. For me, there are a couple of things that stick out that I like seeing. So I review applications for the ESRC and for other bodies too, as well as try to write them. And I think what I want to know as a reader from the first paragraph and first line is, why is your topic important? Why should I care about this? I might not know anything about it, but your job is to tell me why this matters. I always like to put in words like urgent, timely, innovative. They sound very cliche, but if your reader is reading this and you're saying, look, so many ethnic related hate crimes, really urgent that we do something about this problem. Like, okay, I agree. Right? And so don't start with the really, okay, we love the theory, but starting with the first paragraph of your theory is going to switch some people off, okay? So get that kind of juicy why it's important. Think about why your research that you're proposing is innovative. Now this can be quite a tricky one because it's hard to claim innovation in many ways. Think about theoretical innovation. So are you trying to extend this theoretical approach in a way that it hasn't been extended before? Or it might be methodological innovation. So maybe traditionally this particular piece of area of research has been studied using quantitative methods. No one's really looked at the lived experience, or no one's looked at this using a mixed methods approach, or you're developing a new app to look at something, or whatever it may be. Try and highlight or note or think about what makes your research urgent and innovative. One thing that my grant reviews always say, and I feel like it's probably a good thing, but sometimes I wonder, this seems very ambitious, but also feasible. So I think, for me, I think that's probably what reviewers are looking for, okay? They want to know that you've got ambition, but it's achievable ambition. So your research question, your aims, your objectives, it should be obvious that these are achievable within the time. And what you'll find through the drafting process is that you'll have these ideas and they sound wonderful, but you'll realize you need 10 years to do them. And for those of you who are doing a PhD or completed a PhD, this is the exact conversation I have with my PhD researchers or doctoral researchers. You will need 10 years to do this. You've got 3 years. Okay, we're going to need to narrow this down to one aspect of that. Okay, so you can't do everything in these grants. Methods need to be tight. Okay, really tight. The critiques that I get are often methods related really tight, so like sample size, power calculations. You know, is this going to be representative enough? Very, very psychological methods related questions. But I think all of us are strong in those areas. Check your costings. This is probably for you one of the most boring parts. Don't over or under cost. Because if you under cost, you might still get the money, but then you've got to run a project that you can't afford to run. You can't do the things that you want to do. And if you overcost, reviewers are asked to comment on the costings of grants. So I will look at things for the SRC and I'll say, well, you know, I'm not sure why 2 years of a postdoc is needed whenever this project is collecting data for X amount of time. So you need to justify the money that you're planning to spend. Okay, so review process, 2 more things on grants, and then I think I've still got a few minutes, and then a little bit about jobs. Okay, so reviewers are usually your friends, okay, literally and also figuratively. They might not feel like your friends, but they're critical friends, okay? Psychologists, I think, have a bit of a reputation of being quite harsh towards each other. So I see reviews from other disciplines, and sometimes they're very friendly, very lovely, high-scoring reviews. I think as psychologists, we find it very difficult to give a 5 out of 5. Okay? Like it can't possibly be a 5 out of 5 because no one is a 5 out of 5. A maximum would be a 4. There's always room for improvement. But what I've learned is if we want psychologists to get money, you've got to give each other a 5 out of 5. Okay. Okay. So one thing to think about here is dealing with rejection. So rejection sucks, but it happens to all of us. Yesterday, I got a rejection for an ERC starting grant that last year I got through the first round and got interviewed, didn't get the money. This year, I didn't even get through the first round with the same proposal. Okay. So it's a competitive process and it's rubbish in many ways, but we can get through it. You might do this in different ways. You might put it aside, leave it. You don't want to look at it for 5 years and come back to it. You might be, how I feel about the ERC grant, not that upset and thinking now, okay, what can I do with this now? This will be really individual. It will completely depend on how you cope with these things, okay? Sometimes it will be devastating and you just don't want to think about it. Other times you might have expected it and you were hoping you would get it, but you didn't. But the one thing I wanted to say is rejection sucks in many ways, but also success does. And that sounds a little bit weird. But having had 2 grants in the last couple of years, they are extremely difficult to manage. Okay? Really hard to carve out your time to do the research that you've promised that you would do. You've got the pressure of a funder that you didn't necessarily have before, and all of a sudden things can't slip. right? So there is that pressure, and I don't think anyone ever feels sorry for me, even if I do feel sorry for myself sometimes. But it requires a lot of management and a lot of things you might not have expected that you would need to do, like all of the finance side and getting HR to agree to something that they wouldn't agree to, and getting various parts of the university to speak to each other and so on. Okay, so some of you are applying for grants whilst you're trying to manage a job. Some of you will have to do this as part of a job that you have, and some of you want to do this as part of a job that you have. So a couple of things about jobs, so I can give you a bit of time, hopefully. I won't keep going too much. I think all of us struggle, no matter what career stage we're at, to manage our jobs. Okay? We've got competing demands. There are things we really want to do, and there are things we have to do. And it's trying to figure out, okay, what do I really need to do so I don't get sacked, right? How do I keep the money coming in? But what space do I have to do things that I really want to do? So if you're on a teaching contract and you want to be a lecturer in the future, how can you carve out space to do your research? This is kind of conversations I have with lots of colleagues. I think the key message that I've learned from starting positions in various places and with other colleagues is mentorship is so important. It's important for every aspect of your career. We all have mentors at various levels. I'm sure everyone in the room has some sort of mentor. If you don't have one, get one. They don't have to be in your institution. They could be somewhere else. They could be someone you work with, or they might not be. They might be a fellow student. Okay? They might be another academic. So I think it's really important to establish a work pattern that works for you. If you take only one thing from this entire slide, please make it be that it is not healthy to work 24/7, and you do not have to work 24/7 to be a successful academic. Okay? You need to look after yourself. I think if you look on social media, it gives you the impression everyone's writing, publishing, getting grants 24/7, no one's failing at anything. You compare yourself to that and you feel inadequate. That's not the reality, okay? There are lots of failures out there. People are being rejected for things all of the time, and people are not working 24/7, even though they may give you the impression that they are. So please look after your own mental health. If that's the only thing you take from the whole talk, it's important that you get to where you want to be, but if you need to look after yourself as well. The way I do this is I try to make sure I switch off, be that evenings, weekends, or even a day in the week if you're able to work flexibly, okay? So just make that what you can with what you have. I make lists all the time, lists for everything. Lists for papers, lists for teaching, lists for what I need to do and when. Figure out what's urgent. I think there's a tendency to believe that you have to do everything immediately and get it off the desk. If you've got 3 months to do a review, you can wait those 3 months. That's okay. You don't have to do it right now. And one thing that I often say, and I think it's a hard one for me to take, and I'm sure for many of you as well, not everything has to be perfect, okay? Some things can be just good enough. Really hard to make everything perfect. Okay, last one, because I'm leaving you zero time to talk to me. This is the hardest, I think this is probably one of the hardest bits, learning how and when to say no. This is so difficult because if you're keen, you want to advance in your career, you end up saying yes to almost anything because you can see the benefits for your CV. I am on too many committees, but I love them all. I do all of the working groups at work, but it is taking up too much of my time. And I've started to try and figure out when I can say no, and it's really difficult. And the people around you can help you with this. So really, like we were saying earlier in the previous sessions, talk these things through with people. Sit down and think it through carefully. I think the problem is that we can be easily flattered. Well, I can anyway. And I think, oh, this person wants me to edit this book. This is really exciting. But one of the best pieces of advice I had relating to that particular book, which I did do in the end actually, was what's in it for you? Is it going to make you money? No. Is it going to count towards ref? No. Will you get esteem in your work for it? Probably not. What will it do? It will create an international network for me with people that I didn't previously know, who will then reach out for other things. Okay, so just think about what the rationale is for doing something. Some things you need to do just to not get fired. Other things you might want to do for you, but it's getting that balance right. Okay, and I think that's it. Thank you.